no, Argentina. 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 Messi. Messi.
ما بوبرو والروح حي قاديشو أبون بشمايو نتقى داش شموخ تيثو ملكوثو نهو صبيونو أي كانوا بشمايو أف برعو هبلا لحو سبقونو يومون واشبقلا الحو بين وحطوهين أي كانوا الدوف حنان شباق.
For hundreds of years, people have gone to the Mount of Olives and looked down the mountainside into Old Jerusalem. And I imagine they saw beauty, wonder, and felt a multitude of emotions. Today we have it easy, sort of, we get to fly in and we get a ride to the Mount of Olives, and that hasn't always been the case, but nevertheless, those emotions persist. It's a view like none other, and I think it connects one with the world and with their own mortality, and that's inspiring, and I'll never forget it.
So one of the places that we got to visit in our first full day in Jerusalem was the Garden of Gethsemane. We got to visit here while walking on the Mount of Olives, and we got to see this beautiful garden full of lots of greenery and olive trees. And then on the grounds was also the Church of Agony. It was this beautiful church. All of the churches we got to visit were really beautiful. But it was really cool to get to walk around the garden. You couldn't walk right through it, but you could see all around it and kind of envision how peaceful of a place it would have been during biblical times. And while that part of the grounds was very crowded, like lots of people were walking around wanting to see it, the church was a peaceful and serene place, so that was cool.
Just inside the old city walls is the Pool of Bethesda. When you see this site, you get a feel for the ruggedness and number of steps one would have had to descend to get into the water. You can picture the healing we read about in John chapter 5. People believe that the waters were stirred up by an angel, and the first one in would be completely healed. The man in the story had been coming here for 30-something years with no helper. Did he really think he was ever going to get into the water first? Like ever? But when Jesus got there, he posed a different option for the man. He asked him, do you want to get well? The man was still focusing on what he thought he needed to do to get healed, not what Jesus was offering. That's certainly a good lesson for me, to remember to focus on what Jesus offers, not to what I think I need him to offer.
Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou
James, for the Chapel of Judgment, what's your judgment?
No judgment.
He's got a lot of judgment.
I judge rude people.
Hayden?
Yeah. Everything's set.
I don't like people.
That you shouldn't talk inside.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I hate.
Alex Rodriguez.
Oh.
That's not very nice.
Okay.
Rice is bad.
Judgment.
Rice.
Why?
I don't like it.
I'm judging Ashleigh.
What's your judgment? We're at the Chapel of the Judgment.
That's all I got.
I really enjoyed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Just being at the spot where Jesus was crucified and buried and resurrected was really powerful. Also, seeing all the artwork and sculptures and seeing so many different people from so many different parts of the world was awesome.
The Temple Mount is a really interesting place because it's super controversial. It's very sacred and mysterious, but also exclusive because not everybody's allowed to even be in the vicinity of the Temple Mount. But it's also a really cool place because it's a destination point in the old city that you can see by looking at it from a really far away distance.
Because you're here with me.
One of the more unique sights we got to witness when we were in Old Jerusalem were the tunnels that went under King David's palace. They were named Warren Shaft. And you know, as mature college students, the jokes write themselves. But it was interesting to hear about the history of the tunnels being used to access the spring underneath his palace, but it also doubled as an escape route if the city were to fall under siege. And it was just fascinating to think about the psychology of a people back then who had to think for all of those different plans of attack and defense.
Someone take a picture of Scarlette, wherever she is. This shot's really hard to see over her. Okay. I'm not joking, take a picture of her.
Happy birthday to you.
As I approached the Western Wall for the second time, I did not know if I would have a spiritual moment or feel connected to God as I had felt the first time I came to Jerusalem. However, it was even more magical than before. When you pray at the Western Wall, women are on one side and men are on the other. So I was surrounded by hundreds of women, all from different nationalities and faith backgrounds, leaving their prayers verbally and in written form in the crevices and at the base of this wall. We were all united in God's presence at that moment. It was awesome to feel unity as women in that way.
I had several of these moments on the trip, but the teaching steps was another one of those very special spiritual moments to me. Just looking over the view that Jesus would have been seeing, of course, with a lot less buildings, but it made me think, like, of course this is the place God chose to have the most important moment in history. Like, it is just extremely beautiful in that region, and the teaching steps were an especially beautiful area.
What's your irrational fear?
Birds.
Ray, what's your irrational fear? Upside down roller coasters. Hayden, what's your irrational fear?
Your mom.
Mom? I'm showing her this. What's your irrational fear?
No, I'm sure you're a lovely lady. Abby's mom. I'm sorry. Deep ocean.
What? What?
The deep ocean.
Oh, okay, that's a legit one. Steven, what's your irrational fear?
I don't know.
No, what's your irrational fear?
Steven.
What's your irrational fear?
Spiders.
Savannah, what's your irrational fear?
That nobody loves me.
James, what's your irrational fear?
Commitment.
What's your irrational fear?
My irrational fear?
Yeah.
None. All my fears are rational.
What's your irrational fear?
I don't know if I have one.
What's your irrational
I
fear?
have one. I'm very afraid of sock monkeys.
What's your irrational fear?
Heights. Yeah, heights.
That's fair. Jay, what's your irrational fear?
Being a campus minister.
Hey Greta, what's your irrational fear?
My irrational fear?
Mm-hmm.
Man. Well, that's rational. I don't know, kind of going off of cliffs and mountains.
What's your irrational fear?
Being late.
What's your irrational fear?
Frogs.
Did I get you?
So true.
Did I get you? What's your irrational fear?
Birds.
That's what mine is!
Going to the Church of Peter and Gallicantu was a really moving experience. Seeing cells similar to ones Jesus would have been kept in and watching other Christians pay their respects was humbling and awe-inspiring.
Another real surreal moment in Israel would be when we was at the Israel Museum. It was like our last day. And I love that like, I want to say like hour, 2 hours in the museum. It was peaceful because I got to walk around by myself and just enjoy the artwork, go at my own pace, at my own time, look at the artwork. I don't have to worry about like nobody but myself. And I loved it so much.
Ever since I saw it on the horizon from the Mount of Olives, I had really wanted to see it. And while unfortunately we didn't get to go in, we literally couldn't find an entrance, it was still really cool. Turns out that there was the traditional site of the Last Supper right next to it. We could see remnants of its conversion into a mosque during the Turkish era, which I found very interesting. Right above it, there was a really pretty view of the city and of the church, which, by the way, was just absolutely gorgeous. I really just enjoyed exploring an unfamiliar area with rich culture and beautiful buildings with a group of good friends. We didn't know where we were going most of the time, but we eventually found it, and we stumbled upon the really interesting Armenian district on the way.
Some of my favorite memories coming out of this trip was just the evening walks through Old Jerusalem. It was a calming atmosphere, being able to successfully navigate a foreign city with dozens of languages being spoken. Even after being here for 2 days, the tour really brought the geography of the city into perspective. Being able to see how history here was literally built up over time above its predecessors has been a fascinating opportunity to experience.
Brian, you're standing on a 2,000-year-old road. How does that make you feel?
Rocky.